An old man traveling a lone highway came at the evening cold and gray to a chasm vast and deep and wide, through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen stream held no fears for him, but he turned when safe on the other side and builded a bridge to span the tide.
How did the early settlers traverse West Virginia's natural barriers of mountain, rock, and river to undertake the nation's westward expansion? Mountains and deep river valleys formed natural barriers to travel. Where today's traveler can cover hundreds of miles in a single day, the 18th century traveler might make 20 miles on a good day. Valuable time was often spent trying to find a safe crossing point. It was a cause for celebration when weary travelers made it safely into the small forts and settlements set up along the ancient routes. Land may be won through battles and heroic deeds, but it is the land's accessibility that allows settlement.
Accessibility is the answer to economic development. You can't have that economic development unless you do have some access to the land and the businesses and the people that can get to work and go to school, go to the doctor. So the highway system and accessibility is the key to economic development. There are times, I can remember back in the 50s when it would take you maybe an hour and a half to go from here to say Ripley, here in Charleston. It would take you 5 or 6 hours to go to Morgantown, and now those are trips that people make routinely in the morning to go to work.
When the first pioneers traveled westward over the mountains, they followed buffalo and deer trails, much as the Indians before them had done. Hundreds of streams and rivers had to be crossed. Logs were used as the first crude bridges.
How did those people really ford those streams, and how did they traverse these areas? If you look on each side of the major rivers and streams in West Virginia, you'll find a parallel roadway where they had to hunt some kind of a ford or something to actually cross that stream. And I can even remember back in my childhood when the State Road Commission would come through and cut those 2 trees from the side of the hill and throw them across the creek and nail some boards on them, and they'd leave them there till the logs rotted because they weren't treated, and then they would come back in 2 or 3 years and undo it again.
In West Virginia, even up into recent times, travel was difficult due to the topography and mountain streams.
Maybe went to town maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks when you had to go. The only way you went, you either went on a wagon or you walked. They had places they could cross, but when they had to cross, if it wasn't up, they just drove down the river bank in the river and went on across, come out on the other side. But if you get through at all, you had to have chains on and stuff like that. You couldn't hardly get this road. Wasn't no cars hardly got through on it in the winter time. Some places over on the other side of the hill up here, there's old red clay, and you just couldn't get through it at all. And the only thing when traveling with horses and wagon, they had that mud worked up to the slop and slicker and greased. Couldn't get nowhere.
During the migration westward, rivers were extensively used as a form of transportation. Ferries provided transport over the larger streams. West Virginia's last ferry at Sistersville is still carrying people and vehicles over the Ohio River. Stone arch bridges, such as those of the European continent, immigrated to America, coming over in the hands and on the strong backs of the thousands of European and Mediterranean stonemasons. They brought with them the skilled knowledge of cutting and forming the stones that had been passed down for thousands of years. In the early history of bridges, stone was a preferred construction material, but such bridges were expensive and time-consuming to build. The Elm Grove Stone Arch is the oldest still-standing stone bridge in the state, and possibly the oldest bridge in the state of any kind still carrying traffic. Moses Shepherd was hired as the contractor on the National Road and built the bridge in 1817. The bridge near Wheeling is located on US 40, which was the old national road. It was sprayed with gunite, a type of concrete, in 1958 during renovation to help preserve and strengthen it. Constructed in 1832 by Silas Harry, the Van Meter Ford Bridge was located on the old road from Alexandria, Virginia to Warm Springs. It spans Opacon Creek near present County Route 36. The bridge played an important role in the transportation development of the Eastern Panhandle. Built at a cost of $3,700, the bridge is noted for its wide, graceful stone arches and rounded pilasters of native limestone. It is considered a classic example of early American stonework, which was a common construction type in the early 1800s. Not only did municipalities and turnpike companies build bridges on public thoroughfares, but sometimes individuals crafted their own versions of these beautiful structures. Began in 1929 and completed in 1938, Clark Holcomb, with only the aid of his horse, built a stone arch bridge to aid in coal delivery to his home. Holcomb quarried and cut all the stone before hitching up his small horse and dragging the stone into place.
And if he wanted to break a big rock, he'd start making little holes in the rock so he could get them wedges started. And he'd drive them in there and hit one time, this and one lick and that and one lick, and he'd come back and hit this and crack it a little bit so to see it start to crack. And he'd pour that crack full of water, let it freeze and crack it a little more, and he'd come back the next day and hammer a little more and pour some more in. So the first thing you know, it just fell apart.
The bridge, including approaches, is nearly 100 feet long, 8 feet high, with a 10-foot wide road surface. Beautiful as they were, from the 1830s, stone bridges gave way to wooden bridges as they were cheaper and faster to build. With the westward expansion of the nation, traffic was flowing along several turnpikes winding through western Virginia, now West Virginia. Early turnpike bridges were humble wooden affairs with little more than a wooden deck with railing. Later, the bridges were covered to protect the untreated timbers from the weather. As with the stone arches, the origins of the covered bridge can be traced to Europe.
Most people in this country think that the covered bridge is an American icon that grew up out of American soil. But this really isn't true at all. The covered bridge had its origin in the Germanic areas in Europe. There's an atlas that was published in Leipzig in 1735, which has some wonderful plates in it showing a multi-span covered bridge.
West Virginia has 17 remaining covered bridges left standing. The Carrollton Covered Bridge once served as part of the Middle Fork Turnpike. Located in Barber County, it carries County Route 36 over the Buchanan River. The bridge was built by eminent Daniel O'Brien using the patented Burr Arch type truss, which consists of 2 multiple king post trusses. Constructed in 1856 for nearly $5,000 and was restored in 2002 for $390,000. The Milton Covered Bridge is a Howell truss, built by R.H. Baker in 1876 for an unknown amount. The bridge used to carry Cabell County Route 25 over the Mud River. After falling victim to flooding several times, it was relocated in 2001 to the Milton Pumpkin Festival grounds for nearly $700,000. It now serves pedestrian traffic on a hiking trail around the grounds. The Hearns Mill Covered Bridge is a queen post truss located near Lewisburg, crossing Milligan Creek on Greenbrier County Route 40. It was built by an unknown builder in 1884 by order of the Greenbrier County Court. Restored in 2002 at a cost of nearly $550,000, the bridge is still carrying traffic. The Hoax Mill Covered Bridge is a long truss over Second Creek, right off Greenbrier County Route 62. The bridge was built in 1899 for $200 and restored in 2001 for nearly $400,000. It only carries pedestrian traffic now. The Fletcher Covered Bridge is a multiple king post truss, still carrying traffic on Harrison County Route 5/29 over the right-hand fork of 10 Mile Creek, north of US 50 near Macon. Built in 1891 by Solomon Swagger for around $1,400, it was restored for $376,000 in 2000. Now closed to traffic, the Simpson Creek Covered Bridge is a multiple king post truss near the northern edge of Bridgeport, located on Harrison County Route 24/2. In 1881, Asa Hugel built the bridge for nearly $1,500. The present location is approximately 1/2 mile below its original site, as it was washed out in a flood and brought back to the present site in 1899. Restoration in 2001 cost $380,000. The bridge is in a park-like setting with easy pedestrian access. The Sarvis Fork Covered Bridge, a long truss, was originally built in 1890 by G.W. Statz and R.B. Cunningham for $64. After an iron bridge was built nearby in 1924, the Jackson County Court contracted to have the bridge torn down and rebuilt at its present location at a cost of just over $1,000. The bridge, still carrying traffic, crosses over the John Carnahan Fork west of Ripley on a branch of Big Mill Creek. Restoration in 2000 cost around $600,000. The Walkersville Covered Bridge is still carrying traffic in Lewis County. It is a beautiful example of a queen post truss. The bridge was built by John Sprigg in 1903 for $567. It is still carrying traffic on Lewis County Route 19/17 over right fork of the West Fork River. This bridge was completed in 1889. W.A. Lohr built the abutments, and William and Joseph Mercer built the superstructure using a king post truss. The Dents Run Covered Bridge is located on Monongalia County Route 43/3 north of U.S. Route 19 near Westover. A contract for repairs to the trusses, new floor beams, and decking was completed in 2002 at a cost of $185,000. West Virginia's smallest covered bridge is the Laurel Creek Covered Bridge, and it is still carrying traffic. Built with a queen post truss, it is the quintessential covered bridge, located on a quiet country road. Built by Robert Arnott in 1912 at a cost of $365, the bridge carries Monroe County Route 219/11 over Laurel Creek. Located near Lilydale, the bridge underwent restoration in 2000 at a cost of $248,000. Constructed in 1870, the Locust Creek Covered Bridge was built using the Warren Double Intersection Truss on Pocahontas County Route 31 near Hillsboro. R.N. Bruce was the contractor hired by the Pocahontas County Court for $1,250, plus $75 for extra labor on the abutments. In 2001, a contract was awarded for $407,000 to repair timber members where possible, replace floor beams, and roof work. Located on Wetzel County Route 13 near the small town of Hundred, the Fish Creek Covered Bridge is still carrying traffic. It is a king post truss built around 1880, with few details of its construction known. The bridge was restored in 2001 for $218,000. The Center Point Covered Bridge is a long truss built in 1889 by John Ask and S.H. Smith. It crosses Pike Fork of McElroy Creek just east of West Virginia Route 23 in Doddridge County and no longer carries traffic. Restorations were completed in 2002 for a cost of $353,000. The Stats Mill Covered Bridge was originally built over Tug Fork of Big Mill Creek. It was built in 1888 by Henry Hartley at a cost of $1,788. The restored bridge, a long truss, was relocated in 1983 to the FFA-FHA State Camp at Cedar Lakes, 3 miles from its original site. The Stats Mill Covered Bridge underwent renovations costing around $100,000 and now serves pedestrians crossing the pond at Cedar Lakes, which is located off I-77 Fairplane Exit 132. One of the most photographed in the state is the Indian Creek Covered Bridge. Owned by the Monroe County Historical Society and open to pedestrians, it was part of the White and Salt Sulphur Springs Turnpike. A long truss design, it was built in 1903 by Ray and Oscar Weichel at ages 16 and 18 years old, perhaps the state's youngest bridge builders. The completed bridge cost Monroe County only $400. In the spring of 2000, the bridge was rehabilitated at a cost of $334,000. Now, only pedestrians use the bridge, which is located beside U.S. Route 219, not far from the Laurel Creek Covered Bridge. Indian Creek Covered Bridge is a tribute to the ingenuity and hard work of 2 young builders who had a vision of what transportation could be in Monroe County. The Barrickville Covered Bridge was built by West Virginia's renowned bridge builders Lemuel and Eli Chenoweth at a cost of $1,800. The Chenoweth brothers were also responsible for designing and building the Philippi Covered Bridge. This multiple king post truss with a burr arch was built in 1853 as part of the Fairmont Wheeling Turnpike. An extensive restoration was directed by West Virginia University's Dr. Emery Kemp in 2000 for just over $1 million. Though extremely versatile, wood has one obvious disadvantage: it burns. In early February 1989, the Philippi Covered Bridge, West Virginia's oldest covered bridge, nearly burned down when the spark of a car set off a stream of gasoline that had run back downhill from the overflow at a local filling station to the bridge, destroying 60% of its yellow poplar timbers, siding, and roof, particularly on the west span. According to legend, Lemuel Chenoweth had convinced members of the Virginia legislature to award him the contract to build the Tygart Valley River span by placing a wooden model of his masterpiece between 2 chairs and standing on it.
He got contracts, and this one has been validated, the legend that he built a model and took it to Richmond and set it between 2 chairs and walked over it and reportedly said,
"This is all I have to say. Any questions, gentlemen?"
Further research in Richmond has shown that he also had the low bid. So that legend needs a little amplification in that the designers of bridges in this internal improvements movement were very competitive. In fact, the internal improvement movement without federal leadership became tremendously competitive between these towns. Each of them on the East Coast wanted to connect with the former Northwest Territories, and the turnpikes were the way to do it until the railways came.
Recently, the children's book The Great Bridge Building Contest, based on this incident, was published. Completed in 1852 by builder Henry Hartley at a cost of just over $12,000, the double-barreled 286-foot long truss continued to serve U.S. Route 250 traffic through floods and other natural disasters until the accident. The successful return of the historic span to its original appearance, work that set standards for future restorations of the state's remaining covered bridges, was the result of a cooperative effort involving the governor, the Division of Highways, West Virginia University, foresters, and local restoration fundraising groups. Repair whatever we can and replace when we must was the rule of restoration coordinator Dr. Emery Kemp in returning the bridge to Chenoweth's original design, with horizontal siding, a red shingle roof, and other touches not previously seen by anyone now living. Under the watchful eye of Kemp, who had restored other historic spans in West Virginia, and New England, a 38-man crew was formed, filling with epoxy the pieces of the bridge that remained, or shaping and joining new wood using old tools and ancient construction methods such as wooden pegs.
The timber is poplar, yellow poplar, and the Forestry Association of West Virginia provided these trees. They came up from the southern part of the state to Belington, where we set up a sawmill and we could saw them to the size. A couple of them in here are over 50 feet long, and we didn't need to have any splices in them.
Work done under 3 supervisors included the discovery of 9 mini balls, first lodged in the beams during the Civil War's first land battle.
This was touted as the first land battle, I would call it skirmish, of the Civil War. And when we were working on the bridge, we found a number of bullets fired by both sides embedded in the wood.
Following completion of major restoration efforts, a contract was awarded to install a new deck, sidewalk, handrail system, and scour protection for the bridge pier and repoint the stonework. This final step brought the cost of restoration efforts to approximately 265 times the original price to build the span. On September 16, 1991, 2 years and 7 months after fire nearly destroyed it, the Philippi-covered bridge was returned to service when then-Governor Gaston Caperton cut the ribbon, officially reopening West Virginia's premier wooden structure. The state's intent to capitalize on what it had learned by putting to further use the skills perfected during restoration efforts were evidenced in mid-1990 when Governor Caperton announced an ambitious program estimated at $3.5 million to restore the state's 17 remaining covered bridges. All 17 of West Virginia's covered bridges have been restored thanks to the West Virginia Department of Transportation's Division of Highways. Bridge fabricating companies flourished in the late 1800s. There were more than 50 bridge companies and nearly 100 additional bridge builders active in West Virginia alone. Similar to the way a tailor stitches together a custom-made suit, these early metal bridges were individually conceived, designed, and constructed for a particular client and site. Ironically, these cheap bridges had a useful life that approached the better part of a century. This business plan precluded a healthy replacement business. This simple one-size-fits-all solution helped smaller communities and cities solve their troublesome water crossings with low-cost, safe bridges. Even today, smaller bridges can still be ordered through catalogs. In 1999, West Virginia hosted an international conference on historic bridges. The featured event was the 150th anniversary of the Wheeling Suspension Bridge. The Wheeling Suspension Bridge was completed in 1849 by Charles Ellet, Jr.
It was constructed for horses and buggies, for wagons, and for people to walk across. But when it was open to traffic in the late 1840s, that bridge was the longest bridge constructed in the world that had a main span greater than 1,000 feet. The bridge today is still the oldest suspension bridge in the world in use that carries vehicular traffic.
In 1854, as breathless eyewitnesses watched from the shore, Charles Ellet's Wheeling Bridge began bucking, swaying, and fluttering in a high wind. Finally, the entire span collapsed into the waters of the Ohio River. The Wheeling Bridge collapse seriously tarnished Charles Ellet's reputation, and although he continued working as a civil engineer, he never received another contract for a major bridge project. The collapse of the Ellet Bridge also influenced John Roebling's career. Roebling's analysis of the Wheeling Bridge collapse correctly concluded that the deck had to be tied down to keep it from swaying wildly. Still at work on his Niagara Falls Bridge, Roebling quickly added the deep stiffening trusses and radiating cables that became the hallmarks of his later bridge designs, such bridges as the Cincinnati-Covington Suspension Bridge, as well as the Brooklyn Bridge. Rehabilitation of the structure in the early 1980s resulted in top honors for the Division of Highways in the Federal Highway Administration's 1984 National Biennial Competition. Nearly $7.7 million in additional restoration work was performed in 1999. Renovations included a new grid deck, repair of hangers and cables, which were rewrapped with wire to more closely resemble the original. The stone on the towers was cleaned and repointed. New decorative and navigational lighting was also installed. Built in 1888, the Fayette Station Bridge over the New River carries Fayette County 82. Closed in 1979 because of deteriorating condition, the historic steel truss structure received $3.96 million in funds from the National Park Service to restore it for use as part of tourist activities in the New River area. Another bridge similar to the Fayette Station design is the Shiloh Bridge. This bridge was the inspiration for a series of award-winning children's books and videos in which a little dog was found under the Shiloh Bridge. With engineering advances in steel and reinforced concrete building materials and Highway Department custom-designed bridge plans, bridge building returned in the 1920s to tailor-made structures. The appearance of the high-level bridge that opened to traffic from downtown Fairmont to Palatine in 1921 was truly that of a million-dollar bridge. Hand-blown light fixtures, reportedly called Fairmont lamps and never again reproduced, hung in pairs. The bridge also included 4 50-foot tapered flagpoles, topped by gilded copper eagles, with bronze tablets and bases encasing 4 searchlights trained on the flags and finials. Edged by 7-foot sidewalks and handsome parapet railings, the bridge's deck was covered with brick paving blocks. Balconies topped the 4-story buildings within the bridge's abutments. At a time when neighboring Morgantown had no paved roads, the Jefferson Street Bridge symbolized the national Better Roads movement, championed by the U.S. Bureau of Roads, to get rural America out of the mud. The bridge was one of the earliest reinforced concrete arch bridges in the country, a significant factor in its current listing on the National Register of Historic Places. Readying West Virginia's largest reinforced concrete arch bridge for its 2nd century was the state's most costly historic restoration. Under a $23.5 million contract awarded in March 1998, the restoration matched as closely as possible the historic structure's original appearance. Most people don't notice the total number of bridges they cross on a daily basis. On a West Virginia interstate highway, a driver will typically cross 4 to 5 bridges per mile. But when a bridge fails, people do notice. West Virginia has had its share, beginning with the Wheeling Suspension Bridge's early collapse. The Elk Suspension Bridge, built in 1852, fell at 8:15 a.m. on December 15, 1904, when one of its anchorages suffered a failure. 6 people went into the river, and 2 school children en route to class died. Yet West Virginia's and perhaps the nation's most infamous bridge collapse resulted in safer bridges for all Americans. At dusk on December 15, 1967, as Christmas shoppers and workers drove home across the Silver Bridge at Point Pleasant, disaster struck.
Well, that was not a night that one easily forgets, even roughly 4 decades later. It was Friday night in December. We'd had a busy week in the governor's office, and we were winding up the busy week, at about 5:30, Governor Smith had been called in for a meeting with folks from southern West Virginia to discuss road conditions. And the phone rang, and it was Trooper James White, who was a member of the governor's security detail. And he said he had just received a call from the superintendent of state police saying that the bridge at Point Pleasant had collapsed.
Opened with much fanfare in a May 1928 ceremony, the bridge gained wide attention from an engineering standpoint. Instead of the usual woven wire cables, it was suspended on heat-treated I-bar chains. This was a cost-saving result of an alternate design offered by the bridge's builder. The Silver Bridge was 2,235 feet long, with a 700-foot main span over 100 feet above the bottom of the channel.
What do you mean the bridge collapsed? He said the Silver Bridge collapsed, and Paul said, no, that can't be true. You must mean the bridge over the Kanawha River. And he said, no, they're telling me it's the Silver Bridge.
Completed in 1927, the Silver Bridge was originally built for and operated by a private toll bridge firm. The state acquired it in 1941, adding it to the state road system and freeing it from tolls. Civil engineers used a projected lifespan for nearly all projects, but no one could see that 40 years after the construction of the Silver Bridge, the traffic loads would more than triple.
In those days, you had what were called tie lines. To call Point Pleasant, you had to dial a certain code, and you had maybe 4 phone lines into the governor's office. And there were no cell phones, no pagers, no faxes, so we all started trying to call Point Pleasant, and we couldn't get through. All the circuits were jammed. So we tried going through the Huntington tie lines. We couldn't get through. We tried through Wheeling. We tried every way to get some information out of Point Pleasant, and we could get none. Finally, the phone rang, and it was Lieutenant John Flowers, who was the governor's chief of security, and he lived in Point Pleasant as well, and it was his day off, so he was home. And he called the governor's office. He reached Mr. Crabtree, and he said, Paul, I've talked with Rita. Your family's okay. My family's okay, but the Silver Bridge is gone. And Paul said, my God, John, what happened? And he said, I don't know. They just said it was there one minute, and it was gone the next, and it was during rush hour, and it's bad.
In 1928, West Virginia law prohibited the operation of any vehicle whose gross weight, including its load, was more than 20,000 pounds. By 1967, the weight limit almost tripled to over 60,000 pounds gross. At the time of its failure, the bridge had no posted load limit and was used by over 6,000 vehicles daily.
Within an hour and a half, Bob Miller, who was my colleague in the office at the time, and I were fielding calls from all around the world. And all we could tell them really was what we knew. The bridge was there. It was rush hour. It was 5 o'clock. The bridge was gone. There were a lot of tractor trailers on it. And it appeared that if there were any survivors at all, there were probably only a few on the Ohio side who were either coming onto or leaving the bridge at that instant. And as Lieutenant Flowers said, it was there one minute and gone the next.
On that fateful evening, 37 vehicles, including 2 gravel trucks and 5 tractor-trailer rigs, fell into the 43-degree water of the Ohio River.
Governor Smith left Charleston immediately. He'd been in contact somehow, I don't remember how, with Governor Rhodes of Ohio. And they closed off the road to Point Pleasant. And Governor Smith said that his memory of that night, in addition to, of course, the tragedy of the families involved, was that long, eerie, silent drive from Charleston to Point Pleasant, not knowing what he would find when he got here.
Only 8 survivors were rescued from the river. 46 were confirmed dead, with all but 2 bodies recovered. While recovery efforts began within minutes of the collapse, little could be done for those trapped in a grave at the bottom of the river, covered with tons of steel and concrete.
What was amazing to me was how quickly the local, federal, state agencies and organizations came together. Locally, it was a civil defense unit, I think under Mr. Wilson, if I remember correctly. The Office of Emergency Services in the White House. The state emergency disaster plan was activated immediately before we even left Charleston. The White House was involved, Governor Rhodes was involved, and within hours they were talking about even ferry service across the river.
In the months following the disaster, all the pieces of the bridge but the roadbed were recovered and laid out like a massive jigsaw puzzle in a field just south of Point Pleasant. Although there have been many conspiracy theories, the tragedy was caused by an unseen danger.
What happened at Point Pleasant, you had an I-bar chain suspension bridge. When the I-bar fractured, the load that was being carried by that I-bar had no place to go. There was no other member to pick that load up. Therefore, it set off a chain of events that caused the catastrophic failure. Today, we have tried to design this redundancy into our bridges to where we do not have those catastrophic type failures.
Similar to the Silver Bridge in design and vintage, West Virginia's Ohio Bridge at St. Mary's was closed immediately, reopened for a short time, then closed permanently in December 1969. It was demolished in 1971. 4 days after the collapse of the Silver Bridge, West Virginia Senator Jennings Randolph, then chairman of the Senate Public Works Committee, announced hearings that led to the first federal bridge inspection requirements. Exactly 2 years after the Silver Bridge fell, a new bridge was completed just south of Point Pleasant. From the dark cloud of tragedy came federal requirements for bridge inspections nationwide to help ensure such a disaster never happens again.
As a result of the Silver Bridge collapse in Point Pleasant back in 1967, Congress mandated a bridge inspection program. West Virginia has always been at the forefront of bridge inspections. At a minimum, we inspect each structure in the state of West Virginia once every 2 years. That represents over 6,800 bridges that our personnel go out and physically inspect on a 2-year basis.
These inspections are done visually. In West Virginia, an underbridge crane is used for inspections on higher bridges such as the new River Bridge. Bridges with piers and abutments that cannot be visually evaluated during periods of low stream flow must be examined underwater. This work is done at 4-year intervals by dive teams who feel for condition, integrity, and signs of water scour.
Once they inspect the bridge, they determine the load carrying capacity of the bridge and make sure that it's safe for the loads that it's going to be subjected to. And we have a lot of personnel that work out in our district office that their prime responsibility is maintaining the inspection standards and making sure that these structures are safe for the traveling public.
Building a bridge is a huge undertaking for a society. Much like the christening of a ship when completed, bridges are opened with a formal dedication ceremony. This event symbolizes the transfer of ownership from the government to the people. The event planner always hopes for a sunny day, but sometimes things don't always work out as planned. In 1997, when the anxiously awaited reopening of the old Shelian Bridge replacement was scheduled, the rain came down. The bridge was officially named for Admiral T.J. Lopez, a state native who rose through the ranks to become Commander-in-Chief of U.S. naval forces in Europe and West Africa and Allied forces in Southern Europe. The $51 million Admiral T.J. Lopez Bridge replaced a deteriorated 1929 structure that was serving far more and far heavier traffic due to the close proximity of Interstate 77. In addition to the turnpike link at the Shelian interchange, work also included an access road to the town's elementary school. The Moundsville Bridge over the Ohio River is one of the longest tide arch bridges in the United States. The design is a variation of a steel arch. At just over 900 feet long, it took 9 years to build, cost $37 million, and took 6 separate contracts to get it opened in 1986. The Moundsville Bridge crosses the Ohio River at a height of nearly 80 feet. It rests on 3 piers, with 5 land piers on each side. The structure utilizes over 11 million pounds of structural steel, nearly 2,000 cubic yards of concrete, and nearly 500,000 pounds of reinforcing steel. A officially opened to traffic in August 1999 in a ceremony honoring a deceased Major General and former state resident who received the Congressional Medal of Honor for bravery in Vietnam. The Charles C. Rogers Bridge carries West Virginia 16 over the New River at Cotton Hill. The new 8-span rolled I-beam bridge utilized over 1 million pounds of structural steel and cost nearly $6 million. Until November 1998, economic development of some of the best land in West Virginia was hindered by the lack of a Kanawha River crossing within 32 miles of Buffalo, site of a major auto manufacturing facility. Providing a direct connection from a new US 35 upgrade to Interstate 64, the Lower Buffalo Bridge is a testimony to West Virginia's ability to meet the challenge of constructing a major river structure in only 30 months, in time for a new Toyota manufacturing facility to begin shipping state-of-the-art engines. With the cooperation of the Coast Guard, all river traffic was halted so that large and unwieldy box girders could be hoisted 70 feet to mate with superstructure ends cantilevered 45 feet out from the river piers. A twin steel box girder superstructure supports two 12-foot lanes and 6-foot shoulders. At a total length of over 1,800 feet, the Lower Buffalo Bridge is one of the longest continuous steel box girder bridges in the United States. A spectacular finale to the Mountain States interstate system, the Glade Creek Bridge rivals the world-famous New River Gorge Bridge in its dimensions and location, over a gorge 2,200 feet wide and 700 feet deep. Completed in 1988, the continuous deck truss was constructed with 1.3 million pounds of structural steel and is supported by piers over 300 feet high. A dramatic standout on the skyline of Huntington, the East Huntington Bridge was different from nearly all other spans in North America when it was opened to traffic in the spring of 1985. The nearly 3,000-foot, $38 million structure utilizes a distinctive asymmetrical cable-stayed girder design to carry West Virginia 106 over the Ohio River. While cable-stayed bridges have become more common throughout the years, West Virginia's structure was one of the first outside of Europe. The 370-foot-tall A-shaped tower, which straddles the deck at the pier on the Ohio side of the 900-foot main span, is connected to the two largest spans by parallel wire cables, each arranged in harp configuration. In 1999, after more than a decade of experience by other states, a cable dampening system now included in the design of similar new structures was installed to act as a shock absorber to prevent extreme movement in the cables. West Virginia's bold step into the future was rewarded in 1986 when the East Huntington Bridge graced the cover of the Federal Highway Administration's Excellence in Highway Design Biennial Awards brochure as the first-place winner for major highway structures nationwide. In addition to its important engineering innovations, judges praised its combination of elegance in appearance and economy that allowed construction for $10 million less than the competing alternate design. Similar in structure and utilizing a comparable design to its East Huntington counterpart, the Veterans Memorial Bridge of Weirton-Steubenville is a monolith of both concrete and steel, combining the strength of both. Under development for 3 decades, the bridge suffered numerous delays after its 1961 commission due to new environmental policies, design changes, and the search for funding. Construction on the Ohio River piers finally began in mid-1979. Materials used in erection of the superstructure included 9 million pounds of structural steel, 3.4 million pounds of reinforcing steel, and 15,000 cubic yards of concrete. The Weirton-Steubenville Bridge provides 6 12-foot lanes on a segmental constructed deck of steel girders with poured-in-place concrete. Above the deck rises a single 360-foot concrete tower with 26 paired cables. The bridge was opened to traffic on May 1, 1990, by the governors of both West Virginia and Ohio at a final cost of $70 million. Work began late in 2000 on a nearly $16 million Monongalia County contract. The Rubles Run Bridge is the second project on West Virginia's 4-mile portion of the Mon-Fayette Expressway just north of Morgantown. Adjoining a completed 2-mile segment of the superhighway, the bridge crosses the stream of the same name near the Pennsylvania border. The 6-span fabricated steel girder bridge used over 5 million pounds of structural steel. Designed to link I-68 near Cheat Lake to the Pittsburgh area, the expressway will require 4 additional contracts, including another major bridge and an interchange with I-68 in the Mountain State. West Virginia's reputation as one of the nation's leaders in bridge design technology was boosted again when a national industry publication featured the top states in use of high-performance steel, or HPS, highlighting West Virginia's several HPS bridges under construction, with more being designed. The Mountain State is also the forerunner in the use of composite materials.
For example, we are talking about these glass fiber reinforced polymer composite materials that were not on the market even about 10 years ago. We are also talking about carbon composite materials, ceramic composite materials. All these materials that are known as advanced composites are being used in bridges and buildings in some form or another as certain parts, or for that matter as a complete system.
With a number of structures developed under the federally funded Innovative Bridge Program, West Virginia now has several of these bridges built with composite materials and high-performance steel. Completed in 2003, the nearly $3 million West Buckeye Bridge is the world's longest 3-hinge timber arch structure. In addition to its fiber-reinforced glue-laminated timber arch and use of HPS, the single-span 149-foot bridge carrying Monongalia County 39 over Dunkard Creek west of West Virginia 7 has a deck of fiber-reinforced polymer.
These decking systems that we developed are about 1/6 to 1/8 the weight of a comparable concrete decking system. Therefore, we are able to use lighter weight equipment for construction. We're able to place these decking systems at a much faster rate, meaning I can build a 1,000 square foot bridge in one day, for example. And finally, we are able to obtain tremendous amount of cost-benefit ratios utilizing these materials in relation to conventional concrete and steel.
Also utilizing HPS, the $20 million Star City Bridge eased Morgantown area congestion by upgrading the existing 2-lane Monongahela River Bridge on US 19 to 5 lanes. The $20 million Clifford Hollow Bridge may provide one of the most scenic views in Hardy County. Over 1/2 mile in length, the 6-span fabricated steel girder bridge will use over 2.3 million pounds of structural steel and will carry Appalachian Corridor H. What was interesting about this span was the manner in which the steel was put into place. Due to environmental concerns, the steel was launched from the sides. Inching forward, the steel was positioned on the piers. On June 28, 1973, the West Virginia Department of Highways awarded a bridge contract that set new state, national, and world records. Recently commemorated on the West Virginia Corridor design, the bridge is the state's crown jewel.
When bridge designers began to think about constructing a bridge across New River Gorge, probably some people thought they were crazy, because the distance from one mountaintop to the next was quite long. For those types of span, generally you would come in and design a suspension bridge. However, to construct a suspension bridge at New River Gorge, just from the aesthetics, would not have been very pleasing, because you would have had tall towers rising above the gorge. It was envisioned as something that would blend with the natural environment. And so it was envisioned that we would use a steel arch bridge at New River.
The New River Bridge was constructed by the American Bridge Division of U.S. Steel at a cost of nearly $37 million and opened to traffic in 1977. At the time, the bridge was the most expensive single project ever undertaken by the Appalachian Development Highway Program. It carries the state's Appalachian Corridor L Highway, or US 19, across the massive New River Gorge deep in the hills of Fayette County. With a main span of 1,700 feet, the Steel Arch Bridge was the world record holder for 25 years until 2003, when it was topped by another Steel Arch Bridge in Shanghai, China. The total length of the bridge and approaches is just over 3,000 feet. It is supported by 9 land piers and 2 abutments. Contributing to the massiveness of the span are over 21,000 tons of structural steel, 1,700 tons of reinforcing steel, 17,000 cubic yards of concrete for the substructure, and 6,000 cubic yards of superstructure concrete, making a total weight of more than 88 million pounds. During construction, rail lines at the bottom of the gorge on either side of the river transported machinery and materials to the site. A 3,500-foot cableway across the canyon erected the steel, the largest piece of which weighed 172,000 pounds. At 876 feet above the waters of the New River Bridge is the second highest in the nation and the highest east of the Mississippi. It would top the Washington Monument by 325 feet, making it the perfect site for base jumpers on the only day such parachuting is legal, Bridge Day, the third Saturday in October.
How important are bridges to the citizens in the state of West Virginia? I think they're important enough that recently the citizens in the state of West Virginia overwhelmingly voted to put the image of the New River Gorge Bridge on the back of the new state quarter. West Virginia has many things that it can be proud of. It has a rich history. There's many things that West Virginians could have put on the back of that new state quarter. However, they voted overwhelmingly to put an image of the New River Gorge Bridge on the back of the new state quarter.
40 years in the making, the Blennerhassett Bridge will be, at nearly $120 million, the most expensive of any project in the history of the Division of Highways. The Tide Arch Ohio River Bridge will complete Corridor D, a 4-lane highway that links I-79 at Clarksburg with I-275 near Cincinnati, Ohio. Passing over the western end of the island, the bridge will total approximately 4,000 feet from abutment to abutment. West Virginia has some of the country's most exciting and innovative bridges, which are setting the standard for bridge design worldwide. The Mountain State continues to lead the way in bridge aesthetics, innovations, and safety, while looking forward with confidence to future crossings.
"Old man," cried a fellow pilgrim near, "you're wasting your time in building here. Your journey will end with the closing day. You never again will pass this way. You have crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build you this bridge at eventide?" The builder lifted his old gray head. "Good friend, in the path I have come," he said, "there followeth after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This stream, which has been as naught to me, to that fair-haired youth may pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I am building this bridge for him."
This program was made possible through a grant from the United States Department of Transportation, Federal Highways Administration, and the West Virginia Department of Transportation Division of Highways.